This season of the Creative Piano Teaching Podcast is proudly brought to you by Sheet Music Plus.
With teenagers, I like to equate it to sort of being in the car with a new driver. And at first, you're still driving the car, or maybe you're letting them drive a little, and teachers they don't like letting go of that control factor. And then eventually, the teenager needs to be the one in front of the steering wheel.
Welcome to the Creative Piano Teaching Podcast, the place where teachers from around the world meet to share innovative ideas about music education. Listen and learn as we help you motivate your students, grow your income, expand your studio, and become a more creative piano teacher.
G'day everyone from down here in Melbourne, and welcome back to the last episode of Season 3, 2018 of the Creative Piano Teaching Podcast. I can't believe how fast this season's gone and how fast this year has gone. It's just disappeared, hasn't it? You're listening to episode number 140, and a special welcome to all my Inner Circle Piano Teaching community members. My name is Tim Topham, your host for the show, and if this is your first time here, a big welcome to you. And if you're a regular listener, a very big welcome to you as well, and thank you so much for choosing to spend time with me today. The Creative Piano Teaching Podcast is your home for inspiration, ideas, business, and teaching strategies to help support and grow your teaching studio. Today, as I said, is the last episode in Season 3, sad face, but we're finishing with a bang. Today's guest is here to chat with me all about one of my favorite groups of students to teach, teenage beginners. Perhaps we can even convince you that this age group could also be your favorite in the future. Let's see how we go, and listen out for a great discount offer from my guest towards the end. Today's show notes and full transcript and all the links you need are now available at timtopham.com/episode 140. My guest today holds a bachelor's degree in music and a master's degree in historical musicology from California State University, Long Beach. She's an avid arranger, composer, and author of the Piano Pronto Method book series. Well, welcome to the show, Jennifer Eklund.
Yeah, nice to be here, Tim. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, you're absolutely welcome. I've been following, as always, everything that you do and your new releases and things, and I absolutely love all that you put out for piano students around the world because it's just so engaging. You seem to know exactly what we all need for our students, so thank you very much for all the work that you do.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that.
So today we're talking all about teenagers and particularly our teen beginners. And as many listeners will know, teen beginners and transfer students are actually my favorite group of students to teach. I totally love that age group. But for many teachers, it's a bit of a troublesome age and it does have some challenges. So what do you feel are some of the struggles teachers have with teenage beginners?
Well, I loved teaching teens as well. I taught for 20 years before I retired from teaching back in 2014. And we all sort of have our specialties in the field. And I would say that teenagers were definitely one of my strong suits. Little kids tended to exhaust me. And at the end of the day, when you've got those teenagers who you can just, have a regular conversation with and you don't have to put on the show, I just found it really nice. The other thing I love about teenagers is that they're usually the ones who've decided to join the pursuit of learning music instead of their parents saying, hey, why don't you go learn the piano? They're usually coming to you because they've either heard one of their friends play or they found a video on YouTube and they're like, cool, I want to do that. So I find that because they sort of have taken the initiative, that they're usually a little bit easier to mold. I mean, I had one student in particular, her mom actually made her initiate the entire piano lesson process herself. Her mom made her call me on the phone and say, hey, I want to take lessons, had to set up the scheduling, the tuition, everything, from the very beginning. And I thought, wow, I would have never had the guts to do that when I was 15 years old,
Right.
call and say, I want to take lessons. That's the craziest thing.
So great for their independence, though. That's a great
Absolutely.
thing for parents to push.
Absolutely. And I think that that's one of the things I've really liked about just, it's such a special relationship that we have with teenagers that we are this adult in their life, but they see us differently. They don't see us like their teachers at school. We have a wonderful opportunity to be a great role model in their life because we're independent business people as well, and they see that, and they often take cues from us on that level. So yeah, I think it's an opportunity for them to sort of dip their toe into the adulting pool a little bit, do the scheduling, figuring all of this out. Now, on the teacher side of things, I think that the biggest difficulty that teachers have with teens is that it just takes them out of their comfort zone. When they get the new 8-year-old student, they're like, fantastic. I can pull my handy dandy book that I've been using for the last 20 years off my shelf. I put it in front of little Johnny and we're off to the races and let's go.
I know how to do this. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And that's where most teachers are most comfortable. They like being in the driver's seat, and that's not a bad thing. We all have our own experiences and our own strengths. But with teenagers, I like to equate it to sort of being in the car with a new driver. And at first, you're still driving the car, or maybe you're letting them drive a little, and teachers they don't like letting go of that control factor. And then eventually, the teenager needs to be the one in front of the steering wheel because they ultimately need to sort of, drive the car forward. So it's definitely a different relationship. It's not so dictatorial that, we're saying, okay, this is what we're learning this week. I think the other thing that really throws teachers off is that they have to be really flexible,
right,
and they have to be flexible on the fly. They have to be ready for that moment when the teenager comes into the studio and says, hey, I want to learn this thing that I just heard on the radio. And the teacher can't just sit there and say, oh, no, that's not what we do. That's not part of the program. Because I think part of forming that relationship with the teenagers is about this mutual respect. They have gone to the effort of saying, hey, I explored some new music this week. I really like this. Can we do something with it? And if you meet them all the time with just a hard, no, sorry, that's not part of the piano program here, it doesn't breed this sort of like mutual respect thing that you need going on. I'm a firm believer that most people in the world don't want to disappoint other people that they're working with. If you got a trainer at the gym, that feeling if you go in and you're like, okay, I really sucked this week. I had a few Twinkies. I'm sorry, but that's just the way it went. I think ultimately, if you have a good give and take with your students in terms of being flexible, allowing them to work on the things that they've discovered, while also sort of following your program as well, I think that's where you get the best workflow between teenage students and yourselves. So on that level, having the right materials available on hand is really tricky because the musical world in a teenager's life is changing constantly. So you have to be able to be flexible. And I think we're going to talk in a bit about when they bring in sheet music that
right. Yeah,
looks
absolutely.
like all of this is a totally different subject. So yeah, I think definitely just this mutual flow that has to happen, having the right materials and being flexible with them.
Yep.
That's where those are the main challenges that we see.
I think that's great. I really like that driving analogy. I hadn't thought of it, and I really, I think in the first lesson, I'll be in the driver's seat, but really pretty much straight after that, they're mostly driving and I'm coaching. And I really think it's a change of mindset that is happening in education generally around, because of the impact of technology. Teachers, we no longer need to be or should want to be that font of all knowledge and wise. So maybe it might be a wise sage, but we don't have to be delivering content all the time because they can get that elsewhere. It's more about the coaching, the encouraging, motivating, helping with expression and things like that. I think that are far more important, not just for teenagers, but for all our students, really. So the more teachers can disassociate themselves with that old school rap over the knuckles kind of teacher, which I don't think any of the listeners to this show, of course, are, the better.
No, and I think too, what's so interesting and what I found towards the end of my teaching career is how much the timetable had shifted. I mean, I started teaching in the early 90s. And, back then things were just a lot simpler. Kids were still watching cartoons. I would stand in the garage watching, Looney Tunes with a student waiting to be picked up from my parents' house. That's how young I was when I was teaching. This is back in the day when Disney songs were still cool, and like that was seen as a really big deal. But I found too that like the teenage years are starting a lot earlier. Like towards the end of my career, I'm talking like fourth grade. That's when, their opinions start to really, creep in. And like you said, it's not about just utilizing these strategies with teenagers. This is often creeping in, much earlier on. And teachers need to be aware of when these shifts are taking place because it really can make or break the relationship that you have with a client.
Absolutely. And I think I would be almost so blunt as to say with teenagers, if you're not coaching them and helping them learn things that they want to learn, they're probably actually not going to hang around too long unless they're in that really small category of students who are playing Chopin ballades at age 14 and things like that. And they're going to be fine. We're not talking about those guys today.
Right. And that's just not your average student.
That's right.
And you're right. It's a tiny sliver of the market. Absolutely.
So we've already started talking about YouTube and things like that. So let's just cover that now. How do you deal with students who, or when you were teaching, what advice do you give to teachers about helping students who are clearly learning things on YouTube and not getting scared by it?
Yeah. Well, I think that YouTube is definitely sort of the blessing and the curse to our profession. On the positive side, I think it's wonderful that it offers students a way to explore music during the week. When we're not around, I can't be mad. I'm not going to be mad at you if you come to piano lessons and say, "Hey, I was cruising and I saw these cool piano songs that I want to learn," and I can't be mad.
I've actually been practicing for 4 hours a day on it.
Yeah, and I just think it's a misstep as a teacher if you're like, "Oh, put that away. That wasn't part of the plan." Like, again, with the steering wheel, you gotta let go. So I think it's a great way for them to discover music. Hey, for you as a teacher too, it's a great way to stay current. I learned more from my students in like my last 10 years of teaching, more about pop music and what was good. And I still to this day, there are certain weird bands that I would have never heard of had it not been for some of my, sort of indie rock students who said, "Hey, Jen, you really need to listen to this because it's a great song." And they were often right. So in terms of like exploration, I think it's fantastic that they do that. I think that's a net positive for us that they're thinking about music, that they're enjoying, music on their own. In terms of learning via YouTube, I've got more issues with that because, and I think we'll talk some more about this. I'm a big proponent of reading. I'm a big proponent of reading being sort of one of the keys that really unlocks a lot of opportunities for musicians. And I'm talking just, basic reading skills, functional reading skills. I think that there's a lot of place in our world for them to learn by rote and to learn visually. I think that that's fine. And for some students, it ends up being the only way that they learn. And that's okay. That's the small subset that I will still say honestly that I never really mastered as a teacher because, those are the I refuse to read and I refuse to like anything that you pick for me, kids.
It's a real challenge, And
they are, and that's okay. I used to like to turn YouTube stuff into conversations. Let's talk about whether or not this is really a great piano piece. Does this, Euro Ibiza dance tune really work on the piano?
or Eminem rap. I've had kids want to learn hip hop and rap. Sometimes there's a little piano tune in there, but it's hard to find. Yeah,
exactly. And again, this goes back to the flexibility with the teachers that, I often crack up when you look at publications of easy piano arrangements and it's like 12 pages and they've got every verse and every bridge and every this and that. And it's like the kid just wants to learn the darn chorus. Like just Teach them
Yes.
what they want to learn. So, often it's about breaking down what they're watching. Okay, does this really work on the piano? Which section can we make work on the piano? And then let's talk about like how we might want to chart this out, so that you can play the cool part that you like and that will sound good and will make you happy, because ultimately they are your customer. And we have to remember that they are your
Right.
customer. So, you take the good out of it. And I think too, ultimately it's about balance. It's about balancing, where you are on the pathway with them, and sort of the chart that you have already out in front of you, and then balancing that with their sort of extracurricular piano activities that they're moonlighting with. And this is going to vary with every student in every situation, and you just have to use that good teacher intuition that you've developed over all of these years, and see, because sometimes they bring stuff in and it's really not that important to them. They kind of just want you to listen to it and say, yeah, that's cool. Okay,
Yep.
let's go with what we were planning on doing. But sometimes it's like everything to them. And if you immediately just shut it down and say, yeah, I don't like it, that can be a real like business killer. And I think sometimes teachers don't realize like how important some of this stuff is to them.
Yep. And I've had many students bring things in, and one, you can't read it. Two,
Yeah.
they've just spent hours and hours working on it. Three, it doesn't actually sound like, even played well, it doesn't sound all that good to me. But as you say, it's just so important to support. I go to YouTube. I don't know about you, but I'll go to YouTube when I don't know how to do something, or I want to learn some hard Chopin little section. I'll find someone who's teaching it. So, it's the way things are going. So the more we embrace it, I think the better. But just encourage is so, so important. So I'm glad you brought that up. That was really well said. So with all that in mind, we're flexible teachers. We have got these young adults in our studio. We're going to guide them, shape them, go with their ideas as well. But when it comes to the reading side of things, the last thing we want to do is put up a Bastion first primer with all the coloured pictures and things. So I am so excited that you've come out with a method geared precisely at teen beginners. It's called Fired Up, hence the title of today's podcast. So why did you decide to create the series?
Well, I should talk a little bit first about how I see most teen students. I see them falling into pretty much three different categories. And I'm going to be pretty general here. So I know that there are exceptions to every rule, but let's just roll with it. Category one would be your go with the flow students. These are the students who want to learn to play, but they're also pretty trusting of you in the beginning. And they're willing to sort of roll with things. I think one of the most important things that needs to happen with teen students right from the beginning is a very frank conversation, which is one of the wonderful things about teaching teens, is that you can just level with them right from the beginning and say, hey, you know what? We're going to go as fast as we can to get through all of these foundational skills, but it depends on you. And it depends on how much work you put in during the week. And I will let you go as fast as you can possibly go, within reason, so that we can get to the part where we decorate the house, because that's really what they're there for. You give them the foundation and then they get to, do the decor. So with the first category of students, they're pretty willing to just kind of roll with anything. In terms of material, okay, yeah, I wouldn't put a primer level book with, balloons and dancing objects and all of this in front of them. But, these are the students who aren't necessarily turned off by, playing easy folk tunes. They often find comfort in hearing something familiar because it sort of gives them a sense of being grounded in something that, okay, it's kind of cool. I can play Jingle Bells on the piano. I'll roll with that. Because I think the most important thing in those first couple months is to get them playing something. Again, they're your customer, and you have to make them sound like something within those first 4 weeks when you're establishing that relationship and you're in that honeymoon period with them. You get them playing something, because the parent is no longer your customer. Really, the student is at this point, because parents, they will, if teenage student number one over here is saying they like their piano lessons, they're just going to let them keep going. The parents don't question as much with the teenagers. The teenagers are happy. Everyone's happy, and they keep going.
That's a really good point, actually, and that's quite different to younger beginners. I see my teenage students, they're really, it doesn't, what I do in my lessons, is of less importance than the fact that their child is having fun and they're engaged in music.
Yes, absolutely. Because it's really the teenagers who see the return on investment, and then they relay that to the parents. Whereas with smaller kids, it's about the parents seeing the result in the kids. So it's much, much different.
Yeah.
So the category 2 student is the one that I call them the I want to sound great yesterday student. And those are the kids that I created Fired Up for. Those are the ones who are less willing to roll with things, or at least their patience factor in terms of, playing Jingle Bells or Ode to Joy is a little bit less. And that's the group that I wrote this series for, because if you are doing anything remotely kiddish, they're going to be out the door pretty fast.
Right.
And the final category, which we sort of touched on a little bit ago, is the I refuse to read crowd. And that's the crowd that I think you have to just throw everything out the window. You have to get them very basic foundational skills, and then start doing things like lead sheet playing, start using YouTube as a tool, start writing music, to start arranging music. And you just need to, books are not going to help you in that case. I had a teenage student, Jake, who I adored. When I stopped teaching finally, I think it was the teens who were hardest to leave, because you just formed this really great relationship with them. But he drove me insane because he was so talented, and he had been playing the piano for 10 years. So, you get that call from the mom, oh, my son's been playing for 8 years, and you're expecting Liberace when you walk through the door. This kid could not read a stitch of music. And as a teacher, I was so oh my goodness, what am I going to do? What do I do? And he was the YouTube kid. He was the one who would go and find crazy things on YouTube and spend 6 hours learning it. And, with him, it's no book in the world was going to satisfy Jake. It just wasn't going to work. So it was all a matter of, just flexing to what he liked to do. And you know what? He played piano all the way through to when he graduated high school. He was the hardest student to find a replacement teacher for, though. Most teachers were like, I have no idea. I just I don't know what to do. So on that note, I think teachers really have a golden opportunity, if they are willing to be very flexible and creative themselves, is that the teen market, I think, is a huge untapped resource in our field. You have a shorter lifespan with them in terms of how many years you can actually teach them. But they can be very, very rewarding to teach, even the Jakes of the world, who I adored. I'll say that again, just in case
in case he's tuning in. I've got so many stories that are the same, and I still to this day find sometimes my lessons with teenagers who aren't learning reading and repertoire. I'm thinking of ideas on the go all the time. I feel like I might not be actually really achieving very much for them. So, I mean, what I guess I'm saying is that these are perfectly normal experiences for any teacher out there who's listening and thinking they're not really getting through to a teen, or they're not really using their skills very well. It's okay, because if that teenager is engaged in music and they keep coming back, then you're doing something right. And that's only good for the world and that child, I think.
Right. And I think one of the really important points on that is that teachers really need to know to temper their expectations. That much like the drama in every teenager's life, the progress chart with them, there's going to be so many hills and valleys. And it's going to be much different. It's not going to be this sort of smooth upward trajectory that you're used to seeing with, your average, 7 and 8 and 9-year-old. It's going to be all over the place, and that's okay. You're going to have days when you walk out of that student's house or they leave the studio, and you're going to say, what did we accomplish today? We did nothing. But you know what? Those are the breakthrough lessons, though, because often then they'll come back to you a week later and it'll be like, oh, you know what? The sky kind of opened up for me this week. And you'll see that you actually did do a lot.
Yeah, you never quite know.
It just feels like a big cluster.
Yeah.
So with Fired Up, the Pianoranto method has been out for quite a while now. And, I get really positive feedback about, using it with your average beginners, and adults love it because adults actually really like the familiarity of the music selections. They like recognizing things because it makes them feel safe. They're a little less daredevilish than the teenage crowd. So when I decided to write Fired Up, I was really thinking about that second category of student, the student that needs to sound good yesterday and wants to play music that sounds good right away, but still just requires sort of, your minimal basic skill set. So the primary differences are mainly that it's multi-key approach. So you get them sort of opened up into all of these different auditory worlds right away. Teens tend to love playing in minor keys. So I made sure that there is an even split in the books. So it's 50-50 split, playing major minor keys. So you're not getting sort of in this position mindset at all. I toss them into intervallic reading right from the get-go, in a gentle Jennifer Eklund sort of way. We start with small vocabulary, start building it out, very gradually. So we ease them into it. With teens, I always tell them, and they get this, you learn to read music once. You're not going to forget it. Just do it. And then you're done. And then again, you have this key that sort of unlocks this whole world of music and all of these options that we have to explore. It's not that hard. You just do it. You can't really level with an 8-year-old that way. They're more likely to throw a tantrum and say it's too hard. With teens, they've been through enough schooling that they get it. Algebra is hard at first, but you learn it and then you know it and you move on. It's not such a big deal.
Now, a quick word from our sponsor, Sheet Music Plus. I'm sure you've heard of Sheet Music Plus. It's always one of the top search results when you're looking for sheet music because they have the world's largest collection. But did you know they also have a program to help piano teachers save money on their orders? The Easy Rebates program is exclusively for music teachers and gets you things like 8% cashback on all your orders. You can also earn 8% cashback on purchases by your students if you set up lists of music to buy. And I've done this in the past, and not only does it make the students' or the parents' life easier, you also get that little benefit as well. There's also a $5 bonus when you refer a new member to the program, and it's completely free to join. Since Sheet Music Plus has over 1 million titles, including print and digital downloads, it's the best place to go when you have student requests or need something for an upcoming recital. So you should definitely take advantage of this free program. Go to sheetmusicplus.com/easyrebates, EASYREBATES, to find out more and sign up today. It's a good point, that point about reading. You don't forget once it's ingrained and you keep using it, you don't forget it really. And so that's a good thing to remind teens of, because it's, it seems like a daunting task.
Yeah, it does seem daunting, but so is learning any sort of language. They learned English.
Yeah.
They're speaking to you right now. It's like learning a foreign language in school. You learn basic things and then you learn how to use phrases in different ways. And it's really the same thing with music. You just, you grow your vocabulary out and eventually you're a very eloquent speaker, and all is well. You don't forget. The other thing we start with right away is pedaling. Which is another thing that students always want to do right from the get-go. And you figure
Totally.
Teens are a little bit larger on the body scale, so they can handle hitting the floor. You can also use the gas pedal analogy with them, because if they're driving, they get it.
Yes.
They're more likely to keep their heel on the floor. So it was really about teaching students how to learn a piece efficiently. And that's how the books are set up. The pieces are short. They're all just one page, which is some interesting feedback I've gotten is that teachers really like that the pieces are short because it's less daunting for students, that they don't have there's something about 2 pages and, God forbid there's a page turn that it throws them over the edge. So, even though, I got very creative with repeat signs and ending systems, the pieces probably are longer than 1 page, but they don't know that. So psychologically, it's very simple. They have a top portion on the left facing page that basically shows them a snippet of the piece they're about to learn with bullet points, and basically covers, if there's a new theory concept or a new musical term or something, it points it out and says, okay, this is what you're going to see in the next piece. Below that, a couple things happen. I have these pro tips sections where right away, in very succinct language, we start talking about things like technique and artistry and interpretation. And I think those were some of the hardest parts for me to write, because this is all the stuff that I would say verbatim week after week after week to students. But trying to put that down on paper in a nice way that makes sense and that helps people visualize what you're trying to get them to do is not so easy. But I think also it's nice that the language is not tempered at all. It's not simplified. We just talk very straight to them. It's a very adult-like book that they'll read through, sort of little tips and tricks to, perform the piece in a great way. Talking about very practical things like, well, what does mezzo piano mean anyways? Like what, we talk about, the relationship between dynamics, all these things that come up in lessons. But yeah, again, put in nice, succinct, what I want to consider elegant language for teenagers.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that. When I tested out your book, I really like the fact that left-hand page is all about gearing the student up for the piece that's coming and the challenges that are ahead, and then you can see that and put it in action on the music on the right-hand side. Fantastic for teenagers because they can do a little bit of their own study at home. Great for teachers because it's priming you as a teacher for the challenges that are coming up for this student. I thought that was brilliant. I wish more books did that. It just made so much sense.
And I'm sure you know what my ultimate end game in that is anyways, is that we're basically priming the student that this is how you learn a piece of music. This is what we do. This, when we start a new piece of music, it's not always about just diving in and playing it and then saying, oh, that's hard. It's about taking that overview analysis of the page, looking at, what's new on the page, what am I doing here, thinking about it. Then as the series progresses, and I do this more in the level 2 book, we have the prep work sections where, I basically have sort of taken any sort of thinking required out of, section work, which we all know students love doing that. And we all know that they're so diligent about it, right? I wish sarcasm would read.
I know. Yeah, I can get the sarcasm.
Because I'm sure there's a bunch of teachers out there nodding. But, basically we take the whatever's difficult, whatever challenge is presented in the next piece, and we break it down. Sometimes it's about breaking down a chord progression and showing them, okay, all that's happening here, left hand, it's a fifth, it moves down, then it skips down, then it steps up. Breaking these things down, letting them hash it out before they dive into the piece. And ultimately, we're just sort of priming them to approach music in this way, in a thoughtful way, because ultimately it's more efficient. And again, this is another thing. You can just level with the teen and say, look, do you want to learn this piece the slow way, or do you want to learn it the efficient way, so that we get the goal accomplished? And, more often than not, they'll be like, yeah, of course I want to learn it quicker. I don't want to take 2 weeks on this if I can learn it in 1 week. So I think that there's a good mix. I tell teachers, yeah, it's a good way to sort of get your almonds activated about how to teach a piece, but ultimately it's really for the students.
Did you say get your almonds activated? I've never heard that as an expression before. I've seen activated almonds in cafes, but
Oh, really?
Maybe that's a Californian thing. I don't know.
Yeah, we do. We do produce a lot of almonds here in California.
Oh, that's hysterical. Sorry, I interrupted you.
Okay, glad to teach you something. And now I completely lost my. Yeah. Ultimately, my other goal with teens is really not to have them in a method book of any sort beyond like those foundational skills. When I first started writing Fired Up, and I told my husband especially, I said, I'm only writing one book. There's only going to be one book in this series. And then, of course, it turned into 2, and now I'm working on volume 3.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I am, which is a whole, a different question, which we'll get to.
Yeah.
But ultimately, the goal is really to just get them out of foundational skill method type material and get them into repertoire, because and I don't care what age a student is. The method book segment of their piano lesson life really should be about finding where their tastes are, so that you know which pathway to take them on. I'm amazed sometimes when I see the teachers are like, "Oh, they made it to level 6 of the method book, and now the method book is ending, and I don't know what to do." And I'm thinking, wow, I've never even cracked open book 6. I don't even know what it looks like.
I don't think I've ever cracked open book 2 or 3 most of the time.
Right.
Yeah.
So, again, ultimately, I as a writer, I try to write in a way that things don't feel overly methody. Some teachers like that. I try and stay out of the teacher's way as much as possible, because I believe in flexibility. I don't like people telling me what to do. Most teachers don't like to be told what to do. So I like to just kind of give you the material, give you the guts of it, and then, you can augment it however you want. You can take out whatever you want, and it's not going to fall apart. You'll still be okay.
Yeah, that's great. So is the music original, or will they find some pop songs in there?
Nope. For licensing purposes, no, that would have been a nightmare. And I mean, pop music has such a short shelf life. If you still think playing the Harry Potter theme is cool in 2018 as a teacher,
it's not anymore. That's right. Yeah, it goes out of fashion very quickly.
Not. But I sort of let go of my frustration over, not being able to legally sell pop music and all of this a long time ago, because what I really figured out as a writer is that it's not so much the pop music that gets them, it's all of the stuff within it. It's the rhythms, it's the hooks, it's, so if you write music that has cool, catchy choruses and cool patterns that remind them of other stuff, you're usually golden. Yep. So really that's what I focus on as a writer, is just writing music that makes them sound good and makes them feel accomplished right from the beginning. Because again, you gotta strike while the iron's hot.
Absolutely. And you've got backing tracks too, right?
Oh yeah.
And this is so important.
Well, and I tell you, if I would have had play along tracks like these when I was a kid, I would have practiced a lot more, and I would not have balked about it, because it's fun to play with the band. I will say, I think our backing tracks are really, they're really fun. They're a little on the sassy side. I like to take a lot of liberty with things, just because I quite an extensive jazz and pop background from my college days. I love intricate rhythms and orchestration, and I just think that it's such a great thing for students to be able to go home and play with the band, and it's so good for them, and it makes your life so much easier as a teacher if they practice with backing tracks, because it sort of takes care of all of the rhythm issues for you.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, that's a huge issue for piano students, is they don't play along with other people enough. So that rhythm aspect is always lacking. And look, your backing tracks, even from the Piano Pronto series, they're really good. So, if teachers are listening to this and thinking about those kind of 90s backing tracks with MIDI sounds and stuff, it's not like that at all. These are lush orchestral pop song they're just so good. You've done a great job.
I have a wonderful Yamaha Clavinova that's awesome. I love it. I saw it at the last NCKP conference that I was at, and I told Lori Fraser, I said, I must own one of those. I owned one within 2 weeks, and it completely changed everything. I was contracting out for backing tracks before then, and I felt like they were too 90s, they were too old school, and I just wanted them to be funky and fresh, and I wanted dance tracks, I wanted fun stuff. So this instrument has really just opened up my creativity. I love making them, and hopefully they're fun for the students as well. The teacher duets as well. I'm not a fan of polka parts. I don't write polka duet parts for the teachers. So you'll find with the teacher duets that go along with all of the songs and Fired Up, they're also very fresh, syncopated. They really make your students think.
Polka. You're talking about where teachers, that's all they do?
Yeah.
Got it. Cool. Yeah. I'm learning lots of new phrases from you. It's great.
Okay. Well, no, there's no oompa duet parts.
Okay. So it's interesting for teachers.
Yeah, if anything, I've had teachers complain that they actually have to practice my duet parts, which I think is hilarious, and I think it's great. Just on the duet thing, I'll say that's another thing that I push teachers really hard, that you've got to start doing that with your students straight away, because it goes far beyond like the rhythmic benefits of playing duets with your students, because they watch you, and more is caught than taught. So
Nice phrase.
when you play duets with them, they, they will glance over, they see you phrasing, they hear you phrasing, they go with you with dynamics. All of these little things about playing and collaborating with another musician are just picked up sort of on a subconscious level that you never have to say a word. And it's a beautiful thing. So I love writing beautiful duets that make students sound fantastic and feel accomplished, but there's so much more behind it. So I always encourage the teachers to get the teacher duet books. They're separate. I can't stuff my duets down into 2 lines at the bottom of the page. Doesn't work. So it's totally worthwhile.
So it's not separate duet music, it's duet parts for the music that they're already learning in their books.
Yes.
Wow,
Exactly.
so for every piece, you've created notes about the piece, you've written the music, you've created a backing track, and you've made sure that there's a duet part?
Yep.
Holy moly, that is wow.
This is what I do. Also, on the CDs, so we call them super soundtracks. That's just a piano pronto thing. So all of our method books and many of our songbooks have this as well. The super soundtracks, they come in physical CDs or just MP3 downloads, include both the teacher play along part or the orchestrated backing part. So students can practice at home with either, which is really nice. Hopefully that's clear. And there's a lot of music, so it's usually like 2 discs for
it's great, yeah. The value you're getting for the variety and also the flexibility of what you can do with each piece is great. And do students learn early on about phrase shaping and movement of their wrist and articulation and those kinds of things?
Yeah, so that's something that is covered quite extensively in Fired Up. It's talked about in terms of interpretation, shaping a phrase, different types of staccato. I'm not shy about getting into stuff right away. I'm not shy about that in the core Piano Pronto series either, but I'm a little less hands-on about it. So in Fired Up, because it's for an older crowd, we definitely talk much more about that, right from the get-go, and really talk about, making beautiful music. I don't care that you're only playing 4 notes. Let's make it really, really beautiful 4 notes.
Yeah.
Because you can.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned lead sheets before. Do you cover lead sheet playing in the method?
So I don't, but, and this is a big but, I have Fired Up 3, level 3 in process right now. I'm sort of still in the mulling stage. I think I promised teachers it would be out by the end of the summer.
That was silly, wasn't it?
Yep, it really was. Although sometimes my self-imposed deadlines, become hard deadlines and I end up getting things done. Hopefully it'll be out this fall. It's going to continue sort of where level 2 left off, get into a little deeper theory, get into using key signatures and things like that. What I'm thinking of doing is extracting a lot of the music from all 3 levels of Fired Up and making a book called Fired Up for lead sheets. And basically,
you heard it first on the Creative Piano Teaching podcast.
I've done this before and then I have to stick to it. So it's good that I say it out loud because then I have to do it. So yeah, taking out some of the favorite pieces, some of the pieces that are, pretty like heavy on right hand melody, let's say, less with like split melody between the hands, and put them in lead sheet format and talk about, different accompaniment styles, improv, things like this. Brilliant. So that's the idea. Now, what we have currently, which I've gotten really positive feedback from the teachers, we do have these correlating like theory books that go with the regular Piano Pronto method called the Power Pages. And for the Power Pages from movement 1 and onward, so there's 3 books beyond that, we actually do lead sheet playing in those books. It's sort of a all-encompassing sight reading theory, technique, and lead sheet playing and ear training type books. Really interesting. But yeah, I've gotten really good feedback about that because they do a lot of lead sheet playing in those books. So if teachers are interested in incorporating that, the Movement One Power pages start just from bare bones in terms of lead sheet playing, and it's sort of interspersed throughout. So.
Yeah, it's great. Well, as you know, I'm really passionate about that as a skill for students. So it's great to hear you're incorporating it. And of course, last month, our focus was on lead sheets, and we had Forrest Kinney along to talk about that and share some ideas. So I think it's really, really good to do. And I'll be looking forward to level 3, seeing what you come out with. That's great.
Yeah, I will say that I was pretty, I guess, strictly classically trained. And when I got to college and I really wanted to play jazz, and then I joined I joined an improv group and I joined the big band, and they threw me into like the beginner's big band and just tossed me onto the piano and put a big band chart in front of me. And I had no clue what to do. I wouldn't want to be one of my students getting tossed into the fire like that. Like, I wish I had had that training in terms of I knew the theory behind it, but I didn't know what to do with it in front of me. So I do think that there is a lot of value in learning that type of playing. Again, it's sort of a fear factor thing with teachers. Sometimes it's uncharted territory, and they need good materials, solid materials that can sort of help guide them through it as well.
Yeah, that's right. Now, before we'll start wrapping things up pretty soon, because I think we've covered this so well. But I did want to ask: are there any opportunities for improv or creating things in the method as such, or is that something that teachers would do as we were talking about with their flexible approach?
Well, I'll stay in the safe zone and say not yet. Okay. But I don't know. I don't know how. I don't know how this is going to shake out with level 3. I will say this though: if it were me, if I was teaching and using Fired Up, I would use those backing tracks. I would tell students, especially on the pieces that are pretty much, left-hand chords, right-hand melody, I would have them use those backing tracks and improv. You know what? We're in the key of G. Let's go. You could even use the teacher duets that way. They're nice and full, and yeah, you can absolutely use both the duets and the backing tracks that exist already, and not just play what's on the page in the method book itself. But use those tracks. They're fun, and yeah.
Yeah, I love any approach that gets off the page. But I actually think that's a really good approach, because it helps students connect with the music that they're actually playing and realize that, hey, this cool melody that Jennifer's come up with in the right hand, it's in G. It's only using the notes of a G major scale. It's not that amazing. It sounds beautiful, but why don't I do it myself?
Yeah. Well, and even to stay really safe, I would tell teachers, you can even tell them to mimic the rhythm of the melody that already exists. Just use different notes. That's one of the easiest ways into like lead sheet playing or improv, is to use what's on the page already. But, as a jazz pianist would say, just noodle around the melody. And that's sort of a nice little like safe inroad without getting too crazy on things. Because again, it can be kind of scary for students as well. Yep. Some of them are pretty daredevilish, like, yeah, let's go. Yep. I can jam on this all day. But a lot of students honestly, they were like me. I liked the page.
Yeah. Yep.
I liked what was on the page. So getting out of that was, a big step for me. So I get it.
Well, look, it's been so great chatting about this, and I'm so excited to introduce it to more teachers around the world, because I think you've done a fantastic job putting it together. And you've got that experience of teaching to create this method. So it's not coming out of thin air. It's actually, this second category of students. You said, I love your 3 categories too. The go with the flow type, which would be happy to play pretty much anything, do anything. Then you've got the I want to sound great yesterday, who are less patient. They want to sound good right now. They want to be able to go home after their first lesson and play something that everyone knows the sound of to their friends. And then you've got that third group, the non-readers, who are another separate category, who we haven't talked about hugely today. But I really like that way you've split things up. And so good that we've got one category completely covered by this. So tell us... Sorry, go on.
Oh, I was just going to add, and what's interesting too is how they can often switch categories, and you have to be ready for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
category 1 sticks there for a little while, and then they suddenly turn into category 3, and you got to be
And category 3 is the exciting thing is they can turn into category 1s and 2s, and that's really exciting. But you'll never know that unless you go with the flow.
Exactly.
You'll never know unless you go with the flow. Maybe that's a new motto for me. All right. So you better tell people where they can go to find out more. And also, I think you've got a special discount for us.
Of course I do. Okay, so you will find all of this and our other array of products at pianopronto.com. I like to say that we are one of the most transparent publishing sites on the internet. We show you the guts of everything. We let you listen to full audio. You know exactly what you're getting. Everything is available in digital. We have studio license on lots of things. Hard copy, we've got a ton of hard copy. So no matter where you are in the world, you can have access as quick as, like 3 seconds later. And you get to hear everything, and it's a great shopping experience. So you'll find the Fired Up series underneath the method book category. It's got its own little home there that says Fired Up. We do have a discount for the listeners. So we are offering an extra 10% on all Fired Up related products. So that includes the student books, the teacher duet books, and the super soundtracks, which includes the backing tracks and the duet play-alongs. Now, this is on top of our already existing customer rewards program, which is good 365 days of the year and requires no thinking on your part at all. At a bare minimum, of the lowest level customer is getting 10% off of everything anyways. So if you pile this 10% discount on top of that 10% discount, you've got a 20% discount. So like I said, you can take advantage of that. You'll use the promo code Fired Up. It's not case sensitive, and it's just all in one string. So Fired Up gets you an extra 10% on all Fired Up products.
That is brilliant. And I think we're offering that till about the start of November. But
yes.
We'll pop the date in the show notes. All the links you need and a copy of the coupon code will go in the show notes as well. Jen, it's been so great hanging out with you. Thank you so much for joining me today. Is there anything we missed that we should have talked about that we didn't cover?
I don't think so. I think looking through my copious notes here, we got through most. I will say, if I can just put in one more little plug, we do have a new website, fmsheetmusic.com. If you're looking for really high quality pop music arrangements, there's a wonderful program over at Sheet Music Plus that actually allows people like me to legally arrange pop music and sell it now.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
fmsheetmusic.com is our catalog site. I write under a pen name there, which is an homage to my late grandfather. So don't be alarmed that it doesn't say Jennifer Eklund on it. That's on purpose. And I have, I think, about almost 500 pop arrangements up on Sheet Music Plus. So if you're the type of teacher who, really wants a pop song but doesn't want to go through charting it and all of this, you might want to take a look at that site because we've got a lot of great stuff up there.
Beautiful. That's great. Well, thank you so much again for your time today, and look forward to hanging out with you at a conference over in the United States at some stage in the future. We'll get together, I'm sure.
Yes. All right. Thanks, Tim.
I hope you enjoyed that chat with Jennifer. It's wonderful to speak with someone who shares so many of my own thoughts about teaching, and especially this teenage age group. What resonated with you? Did you disagree with anything we said? If so, I would love to hear from you. Just make sure you head to the show notes page and leave a comment, or find us on Facebook or on Instagram and leave a comment there. I always post notifications of these episodes, so it's a great way for you to keep in touch with us. And don't forget to grab Jennifer's great discount offers too. And don't forget to download my app on either the Google Play or the Apple App Store. Just search for Tim Topham, 2 words, and you'll be able to download my app, which will make listening to this podcast and accessing all my videos, my Facebook Lives, and my blog posts really, really easy. So that was the last episode in this season of the Creative Piano Teaching Podcast. And so if you've enjoyed this season, I would really value either a Facebook review or an iTunes review. You can find out more about how to review on iTunes at timtopham.com/iTunes. And if you're interested in a Facebook review, which is probably easiest for most people, then just head to my Facebook page by searching for Tim Topham Creative Piano Teaching. So what's happening in season 4?
I spent a lot of time just asking questions about because he put this Braille music on the stand, and I went, "What is that?"
As we all would. So what does it look like?
So it's a lot bigger. So it's not quite A3, but wouldn't be far off.
It's like
maybe
double the size almost of a normal book. Yeah.
Yeah, it's huge. And from what I have gathered from asking him over the last couple of years is, he might have maybe only like a quarter of a page of what we might have on our regular music on his page. And the tricky thing is there's no way to be able to conceptualize both parts simultaneously. So he has to feel the right-hand part and he has to feel the left-hand part, but that has to be obviously at separate moments. And you can't feel them simultaneously, not like we would read two lines simultaneously.
That was Anastasia Buettner-Moore, who's back for another episode, this time talking about her experience teaching a blind student reading Braille music. Had she ever done it before? No. Did she know what she was doing? No. Did she give it a go? You betcha. I'm sure you'll be as blown away as me when you hear this story. It's utterly amazing, and I give so much tribute to Annie and all those teachers around the world who are happy to put their hand up and say, yep, I'll try something completely outside my comfort zone. And Annie has had such success with this student that he's about to go for an audition at a conservatorium. We're also welcoming Ruth Power from New Zealand to the show to talk about playing by ear. Take a listen.
I think my inspiration for it originally when I was growing up was in church. It's probably a similar story to a lot of people. And you see the sort of the church band and like the pianist would be playing these amazing piano arrangements to accompany the congregation, but with just a lead sheet, And once I saw that, just written letters on a page, and I was like, what is this magic that they're doing, And
what is this sorcery?
Where is the magic ink on the paper or something,
Playing by ear is obviously something that's really close to my heart as well. So it was great to share this conversation with Ruth, who's doing some fantastic things over in New Zealand for everyone online. Some other guests to look out for in season 4, Duncan Lorien, TEDx speaker and presenter of international music seminars around the world. We're going to be talking also about worship music with a couple of people who can help improve our own skills in this area and also help our students take on this role as well. It's a topic that I've been asked a lot about, and particularly for teachers who might be thrown into this world of helping with worship and church services, and are sort of expected to just kind of make stuff up on the spot and improvise and arrange and things. I'm just going to give you some really key tips about how you can approach that part of your learning. I'm also interviewing David Hart of G4 Guitar, all about building your own method, which he did from the ground up for his franchise music school. And yes, you heard that right. It is a guitar teacher, but my goodness, David is an incredible entrepreneur, and the way he decided to build his own method and how he did it and what it looks like is going to be useful for anyone who's interested in building their own curriculum. We've got lots more to be announced. I can't wait to share these conversations with you. We'll be going live at the start of October for season 4. As always, thank you so much for listening. I'm Tim Topham, and you've been listening to the Creative Piano Teaching Podcast. See you in season 4.
That will conclude this evening's entertainment.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Creative Piano Teaching Podcast. We'd love to help take your teaching to the next level as a member of our supportive community. Use the coupon Piano Podcast for $100 off an annual membership of Tim's Inner Circle today. To find out more, head to timtopham.com/community.